Welcome back to the Relentless Growth Podcast with myself, Chase Calhoun, my good friend Jack Maher. Jack, how you doing today?
Doing great. Ready to dive in.
Nice, man. Well, today we're going to talk about the future of communities, kind of what we're looking for when we're looking at building and developing communities that not just places for people to live, but I guess places that people are going to enjoy living in. But before we dig into that, I'd love to hear, a win for you and maybe just a quick update about what you guys have going on in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, sure. And for everybody out there, if this is your first time listening, Jack Maher, John Maher Builders is our company. It's a family business. We're located here in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is about 30 minutes south of Nashville. And so we build single family and multifamily. And so biggest thing for us lately is we've got two votes. We've got a vote tonight and a vote Tuesday on two separate single family neighborhoods. And so we've got a second vote on one of them and then a first vote on another. And so those are projects we've been working on for 2 or 3 years to get to the finish line. And so it's both exciting and nerve wracking when we get to this stage of a project. We've put a lot of time and money into it. And so it's somebody else's decision on whether it gets to go forward or not. But we're excited about it. We're currently exclusively building multifamily. And so our goal has always been to get back into that single family realm as well. And so those two projects would be a great step in that direction. And so that's a big win for us that we've gotten at least close to the finish line here, and we'll see whether we can score or not. But what about you, Chase?
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we were chatting a little bit before we started recording here and got online. But for me, we just got back into town. I just finished that full Ironman race in Switzerland, which was both a hard but very cool, rewarding experience. So for a win, that would be my win. And I guess for an update, just one thing, it was kind of nice to be gone for a couple weeks and having things still running well while I was out of the office, and the team did an amazing job kind of getting stuff handled while I was gone. But similarly, we're working on some build to rent projects. We've got one that we already have the lots and we weren't able to get entitled, but now because of new state law, we're trying to build single family homes with attached ADUs. So we still have 2-unit density on single family lots, just a different way of doing it. We got a lot of pushback right out of the gate as soon as that law was passed, and we tried to exercise the new state law. But it seems like we've since, the city's kind of backed off a little bit, and I think we're waiting on one more grading permit to get approved, but I think they've already approved our building permits. So it's like we need the grading permit before technically we can start building. But I don't see any further reasons that should get delayed more than it already has. So hopefully in the next couple of days we'll be approved there. And then similarly, we've got a build to rent project teed up. We just closed on the land yesterday, actually. And then it's going to zoning. There will be 2 meetings. So one with the planning commission, one with the city council meeting next month. And so just kind of now in limbo. Everything's been submitted, just waiting for those 2 meetings and hoping they go well and we get that approval.
That's great. That's exciting. I know that's been a tough road lately.
Yeah. It'd be nice to get some of these things moving forward. I guess that could kind of bring us into our topic. We're going to talk a little bit today about, these communities that we're looking at. And again, for us, it's like some of the stuff we're doing smaller. And so there's not necessarily a ton of like amenities and stuff, although I would say there's things that we're looking at that may not be required, but I think is important. But I know for you guys specifically, you're doing multifamily development and that I've personally got an opportunity to see. And I feel like you guys do an amazing job at trying to focus on amenities that make stuff more of a community, not just a place to live. So maybe you want to get started with some of the stuff that when you're looking at these projects, what you're taking into account.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really interesting time. I think coming off of COVID and coming off of kind of the shift that we're seeing with demographics to more of a rental population overall. I think we're in a pretty interesting market right now. And so I think this is a really interesting topic, both multifamily and single family. And so on the multifamily side, I think the things that we're seeing are, people want, I think resort-like. I think too many apartment communities use that term in their marketing, and I wouldn't say ours are resort-like, but people want the big pool, the tanning decks, the workout facilities, nice coffee. People have place a really high value on the amenities. And it's funny, like certain things get used a ton. The pool during the summertime always gets used, and I think it's a really high value thing. The exercise rooms don't get used nearly as much as you would think they would, So it's an interesting time because I think there's a real dichotomy between what people demand and what they actually use. And so there are certain things that I think don't get used as much as others. But when it comes to renting a property, it's still important that you have them. And so that's kind of the interesting part is you kind of have to play that game of we've got to create something welcoming that people want. We have a lot of like just working space in our clubhouse where, they can set up their laptop, work for a day, take some calls. And I think that's something that we saw post COVID on the single family side, a lot more demand for home offices, a lot more demand for dedicated working spaces. And so I think that's a trend that, we're seeing a little bit of a return to office, where people are going back. But I think working at home is here to stay in some capacity. And so for certain people, the benefit to, hey, I don't have to stay in my apartment all day. I can work in the clubhouse or I can work in the kitchen or wherever it is and have a little different environment is a big deal. So those are like a couple things. We built pickleball courts. We just put in some grills. From a multifamily perspective, I think it's a combination of making it feel like a house in a lot of ways and like a resort, having all the amenities that you would have someplace nice, a nice hotel, but also having a few homey features like, hey, if you want to grill outside, we don't allow grills on balconies, so we provide a place to do that. And so it's kind of combining the home ownership aspect with the vacation or resort aspect is kind of how we look at it.
Yeah, it's really cool. When I'm looking at the build and rent projects that we have right now, and they're not a large enough scale yet to where we can really lean hard on like the amenities of the neighborhood. But I've had the opportunity to go to some events where there's larger like institutional players that are in the build to rent space. Who treat the build and rent subdivisions very similar to like a large apartment complex. So like they won't even touch it unless it's going to be 300 plus homes, because they want it big enough where they can put those amenities into the neighborhoods. And for them, like it's very important because like you said, it's a little bit different with build and rent because you do have the home, but it's also like the way they look at it is it gives them a way to kind of compete with the apartments in a way. So it's like you can have the house, but you can also have the pool and the exercise room and stuff like that. I think regardless if it's apartments, so if it's apartment complexes or if it's like a build and rent subdivision or something like that, I personally see a lot of those amenities as a big selling point. One thing that I think is cool, and I'm not sure if you guys have these or not, but do you have like a dog park or dog pet area? Yeah. For me, it's like when I look at stuff that's like from the renter resident side and the developer owner side, like something that's like not super cost, not very expensive, although maybe a little bit messy to maintain, but it's like a big selling point for residents. Like if I was going to be renting, like I think having a dog like pet area is a super valuable one that I personally saw that you guys do that I've never seen anywhere else. Is the kids playground. Like I think it's super cool that you guys have like a park style playground for the kids. Just again, being a parent, like I know Brenda, like one of the things she loves to do is take Aspen, and one of the things that Aspen loves the most is just to like take her to like a really simple little toddler playground or something like that. It's not a bunch of stuff, but she absolutely loves that and being able to just play. So having an amenity like that in an apartment complex is probably not crazy expensive to maintain, but it's probably a big selling point for people. There's some guys here locally to us that do the Class A apartments, and they do ridiculously amazing job at it here. The guys that are doing it well do it like really, really well here. And so it's cool to see like they've got some like ridiculously nice pools and clubhouses and bars and social hours and all these things going on there. It's not necessarily as like interesting to me where I'm at in life and with my age and stuff like that, but I can see for like younger residents how that would be a huge draw. Like when you're looking at two apartment complexes and one's got a freaking pool area that looks like it's a 5-star resort versus one that doesn't have a pool, like, and the rent prices are the same. It's even if they never use the pool, it's just like the idea, like you said, that they have access to it is a huge selling point. And I guess the last one that comes to mind is, and maybe for you guys to think about, but I used to work out with a trainer who lived at one of these nice resort style Class A apartment complexes. But they had a badass gym. Like, it was the nicest apartment gym I've ever seen. I would say it almost borderlined like a small gym that you would pay a membership fee to go use. And a big selling point for them is that they could have, like, if you were a personal trainer or something like that, you could use the facilities to train clients in and stuff. And so I would go in there and work out with him at like 5 o'clock in the morning. There were like 4 or 5 trainers that lived there. They were using the gym to train their clients, and there was a lot of people in there using it. And I think it was like the kind of the selling point with that one specifically. It was like nice enough that you could cancel your gym membership and use the gym there. So again, I don't know if that's something you guys ever considered, but it was interesting. It seemed like that gym at least got a fair amount of use.
No, that's a great idea. Yeah, we have a cardio room and a strength room, and then we have like a yoga bar studio where we bring in teachers and they do classes and stuff, which I think has been well received. I think, one of the things you brought up with some of your local guys there, or one of the things it reminded me of, is I think there's a real opportunity for people like Chase and I, for smaller people, to do the rental thing a little different, or even build houses different to sell. I think, post '08, the amount of local people building it's almost non-existent. Even in build-to-rent communities are largely done by, the big national builders. It's largely an extremely cookie cutter product. They might have 3 or 4 plans. They build the same thing. It's the same size lot over and over and over again. And to me, it doesn't quite feel like home. It's cool and it's better than an apartment in a lot of ways. You got a yard, you got all the things. But I think there's a real opportunity where, like, when we do a single family neighborhood, largely our MO over the years is we do, and this will be a little technical, but we do 60, 65, and 70-foot lots. We alternate them all throughout the neighborhood. That way you've got a different width product. You've got a little different look. It just creates like an interesting streetscape that's different than, hey, the same box over and over again. And so we tried to do the same things on the apartments, looking at it kind of from the effect of, we're not necessarily trying to maximize space. We're trying to make it livable. And so from the outside, we've tried to have it look like a house, have a pretty interesting design that's different than what you see out there. And from the inside, have it look like a house, have it feel like a house. Maybe it's not the most efficient space, but it lives really, really well. And so I think as more and more nationals move into all the markets, really, small guys, locally owned people, it's going to be harder and harder to compete. But I think with the way we design things, I think we really can continue to, because where a big company is rarely going to make a decision that's going to cost more money, but may impact the end user. And so I think we have the opportunity to make some of those more flexible choices that really make a product seem more livable. And when you talk about comparing multiple things, we're going to get to a point where, there's going to be a lot of options. And so we've got to be competitive. And I think the way we design it, the way it lives, the way it looks, if what everybody says is true, and, people are going to rent for sometimes 20 years, 25 years before they buy a house, or maybe they never buy a house. With some of the younger people coming in, it's going to be important that it feels like home, not that it feels like an apartment or something else. And so I think kind of those individualistic things, I think, are something that can really separate it. Trim more cabinets, all the little things that just make it feel a little bit more like home.
The higher ceilings,
Mm-hmm.
nicer can lighting versus puck lighting. I think all that stuff makes a big difference. One thing that came to mind to me, and I've never seen this before or ever heard of it, but you kind of touched on it a little bit, maybe or something just at least thinking about, but you talked about people liking to use the clubhouse space for work and having a little bit of space where they can work. One thing I've seen here that has been super popular, and I almost wonder if there's a space for this in like your guys' nicer Class A apartment complexes is like a co-working type space setup, because you could take a really small space and just have some really nice, like clean working areas, like desks with plugs and high-speed internet, and maybe a printer that could be used or shared by all, and then like a small, conference room where people could reserve it for meetings and stuff like that. Kind of like the gym where people are allowed to, if you have a business, that apartment complex allowed trainers with a personal training business to use the gym for business stuff. Man, if you had a clubhouse and you just had like a little area carved out that was like a really nice co-working type space, I could see that being a really big draw for residents that are working from home. I know the co-working spaces, like we've looked at them locally, like they're kind of expensive to be a member of, like a gym membership. It's pretty expensive monthly. And so like that might be a cool amenity that really wouldn't, when you think about it, it really wouldn't cost that much to set up something like that if you had the space.
I think it's a great idea. We've looked at putting in, I've seen them in a lot of the cool hip places, those little phone booth type things. Where it's a little soundproof box where you can take a call or do something like that. So I think those would be interesting. We've actually looked at, which selfishly would help me. We've looked at doing a podcast studio.
I was just gonna say that Griffin apartment complexes, that'd be nice. You know what I mean?
I think one locally has, and so I haven't been in it, but I know they have one. And so I think those little things where, hey, if you're young and that's been an aspiration of yours, and you're the only one in the area that's got a podcast studio at your apartment, maybe it costs you, a little bit of money to set up, more than they would ever spend. But that could be the tipping point, for a couple of people a year. And so I think those creative things like that are really what's going to make the difference.
Yeah. The only other thing that kind of comes to mind for me with this, and again, we're not quite there yet, but hope to be at some point in the future, is I start thinking about whether it's apartments or maybe more so like build to rent, but like kind of like really setting or really diving in harder on your demographic, and or focusing on a specific demographic. So again, for example, like that Class A apartments that I have in mind here, where they do this absolutely freaking amazing job with making it like a cool, young resort style place where like all the young people want to live and hang out. And it's almost like a, kind of a flex that they live in that apartment complex type deal. But then there's also a lot of, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for like 55 and older communities. And so, but again, if that's your demographic, like you almost want to go really hard on that, have amenities. Like they're not going to care about the huge resort style pool, but they may want there may be other amenities specifically that could be, geared specifically towards them. I met with a builder, and he wasn't quite doing a build to rent. I think he was doing a build to sell, but it was like a 55 and older community where he was going to have amenities. Like they were going to have a little small commercial space where they can have like not like a full medical and home care, but like an assisted type care company come in and like have an office there, but they could also assist the residents and stuff for a fee, and some like ancillary businesses that were going to help those residents specifically. So I guess knowing your target demographic, and at some point, like when it comes to these kind of amenities and stuff, really maybe honing in on who that's going to be and structuring the amenities specifically towards them if you can.
Yeah, I think it's huge. We're seeing a little bit of it here. We've had a Del Webb community that it's finished now, but it's been built out. That's Pulte owns Del Webb. They're a big 55 plus builder across the country. But I think it's something that I'm sure it's happening in your area. The areas where, especially we've gotten a big population boom post-COVID. A lot of it happened during COVID, but it's continuing to happen where now you get grandparents move in. You had the families that made the choice. Hey, we don't want to live our whole life in Illinois or California or New York, and so we're going to move somewhere place else. And a lot of them followed immediately, but a lot of families are continuing to trickle in. And so I think it's a great point, and the thing that always I have to remind myself of, because especially Tennessee, we get a bad rap. Not necessarily a bad rap, but I think everybody has a perception that everybody that moves to Tennessee from California or Illinois or New York is a millionaire. They're buying a big house and they're doing all these crazy things. And the reality is you get people across the board. you have a lot of people like that, but you also have a lot of people who they were renting in California, New York, or Illinois, and they're going to rent here, and they just want that better quality of life. And so, some grandparents, yeah, maybe they want to live in the high end neighborhood right next to their kids, and so maybe that's not a need that we can fill. But for those people that hey, they don't have a ton of money, they're on a fixed income, they need a good place to live. And so I think that 55 plus product is going to be really interesting in these areas that have seen a big population boom, because people are going to continue to follow year after year to get closer to their kids and to their grandkids. And so I think it's a great point. And I think it requires a lot of specific design. In a multifamily product, you've got to have elevators. You've got to make sure all of that stuff is dialed in. And then, like Del Webb, the reason Del Webb is successful is because they do a tremendous job programming. They've got basically I'll call it a cruise coordinator on staff that, they plan events, they plan socials, they plan pickleball tournaments. And so, that's part of what you sell in a lot of those 55 plus communities is it's a chance for people to really get together. And so, that becomes kind of a part of that. And so I think even we see that same thing at apartment complexes with young people too, where we get a pretty good turnout at resident events. People, I think people in general are a little more isolated than ever because maybe they are working from home, maybe they did move here, maybe they don't haven't met a ton of people here if they moved here during COVID. And so I think the opportunity for whether it's a neighborhood or an apartment complex or 55 plus to coordinate events, to coordinate things where people can get to know each other, food trucks, all those little things where you can get people out of wherever they're living and together, I think are a big bonus to people. That maybe it's hard to market that on the front end, necessarily, but I think it definitely helps with retention when you get people living together who know each other and are friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess, for me, at least, the final kind of thoughts for me, or maybe it's just a little bit of for my own benefit, right? So we're looking at smaller build to rent community, and I wonder if you have any advice for amenities that are possible that aren't super expensive. So, like for me,
Yeah.
a couple simple things that come to mind are like, we may not be required to do sidewalks on both sides of the street, but we'll do sidewalks just so there's space for people to go out and walk around the neighborhood, a little green space areas. Again, I don't know about doing like the playground thing, but if there's space, like I think that's something that comes to mind that might be very good. And then one thing we're considering is treating it like an apartment complex where we'll probably offer front yard landscape maintenance as part of the residence package. That way it's like twofold that people don't have to worry about doing it. They're only maintaining the backyard if they want to. But we can keep it looking good and then kind of lower hassle for the people that are living there. But I wonder, it's kind of easy with these huge apartment complexes to come up with this stuff that's really cool, but it's harder to justify if you're only talking 50 or 60 units. Is there anything else you could think of that we should look at?
Yeah, I mean, looking at, and it's probably in some bigger neighborhoods, but kind of some stuff we've done in the past. And one thing that I think is an amenity that you're doing or starting to do is the ADUs. Depending on how you look at that, that's new. It's a different way to look at an amenity, but it is that, lower cost of living, all those things. And so one of the things that I really didn't expect to be as effective, and granted, it is not the least cost efficient thing, but like we built a pavilion in one of our neighborhoods and let people use it for a nominal fee, although you could very easily charge more than we did and make up the cost for it. And that thing is rented every weekend for parties, for football parties, for birthday parties. I mean, it's hosted wedding showers. I mean, just like a little place, you can do a pavilion for not too much money. But on a hot
Is this
day,
indoor or outdoor? Can you describe
it's
that?
outdoor. It's outdoor. So this one has a small, like, it's got a little room with a fridge and it's got bathrooms, but I don't think that's necessarily necessary. But I think just a covered area for people to gather outside is something that's relatively inexpensive. You put a grill or two there, and it gives them a place to have that community. And it, if you're going to have 20 or 30 people over, a lot of people would rather do it not at their house, and so gives them a place to gather. But if you drive past, I drive past it all the time. We still own a house in one of our old neighborhoods, and it's every weekend. It's booked up Saturday, Sunday, and so it's been a huge draw. We had no anticipation that it would get used nearly as much as it does, and so like we have Santa come every year.
Yeah.
You know, the kids in the neighborhood come take a picture with Santa, little stuff like that. But that pavilion has been it's probably been our most successful amenity ever.
That's really cool. And I'm assuming it wouldn't be very expensive to build something simple like that.
Yeah, I mean, a simple pavilion. Yeah, we probably went a little over the top, but the part that people use, just the covered area with a fan to
Kids' birthday party.
live and hang out in, that's very inexpensive to build. Yeah, but it's been extremely well used.
That's a good one. I like that idea. Cool. Well, before we wrap it up, any other thoughts or major takeaways on it from you?
Yeah, I would just say, if you're listening and you're getting into this type of stuff, just be creative. I don't think you need to think way outside the box. I don't think you need to be the most unique property in the world, but I think it's the little things that are gonna attract people. And so, if you're doing something a little different or something that you think you would enjoy if you live there, I think I would encourage people to pursue that stuff. And that may be the difference between you and another property that gets people to consider you. So, just be creative.
Yeah. I think you mentioned it briefly, but I think the biggest thing for me is just trying to look at it through the lens, like if I were going to be living there, what are some of the stuff that like would kind of be a big selling point for me or a big push to me. So like if I were going to rent, what's something that would help me make that decision between two different properties? And so I think, as always, like you look at stuff through that lens, and it'll help bring some of that stuff to light. That would be cool for people.
100%.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us. I hope you get value out of this. Again, please don't hesitate to like and share the podcast with people if you get value out of it, and don't forget to follow along so you can continue to get these updated. And we'll see you next time.